Hey everyone, this is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today we're going to take a look at the astrology of September. So it was an eventful month of August. I hope that you guys had a good one. There's also a lot on the table coming up here in the month of September. Some big aspects that we're going to take a look at today. And then, as always, if you're new to my channel, remember that the aspects that I cover in this monthly overview are broken down week by week, one transit at a time, in depth. So this is to give you a sense of what's coming. And then if you stay tuned, transit by transit, we'll break it down and take a look at it together. I also want to remind people that I do monthly sun and rising sign horoscopes on these same transits, usually kind of a pared down version. So I'll pick maybe a few major aspects that I want to look at for all 12 signs, run them through the whole sign house configuration. So you can watch for those next week. All right. So the transit of the beginning of September, the major transit that starts the month on September 1st is going to be Mars opposite Neptune. Now, this is one in a sequence of aspects happening. We talked about Mercury opposite Neptune this past week. Now, Mars opposite Neptune to start September, and then the Sun opposite Neptune in the middle of September. Let's walk through the Mars opposite Neptune aspect first. One of the things that stands out to me about this aspect is the way in which it often will have some really strong correlation with martyrs. Mars and the word martyr share etymological roots. And one of the meanings of Mars in ancient astrology, especially correlated with the sixth house, by the way, was the idea of dying or fighting for something, or, putting blood, sweat, tears, and some degree of personal sacrifice into a cause that you believe in. So I've noticed over the years that Mars opposite Neptune people have a little bit of a Joan of Arc streak in them. It's one of the phrases that I use to describe it anyway, where there might be a vision, a sense of mission, a sense of calling, or a sense of purpose, and this feeling of being able to sacrifice on behalf of it. The downside of this transit that I've noticed is the lack of vision, or the feeling of weakness, or the feeling that I'm lacking some sense of special calling. Neptune tends to make us feel like there's some extraordinary and transcendental sense of mission and purpose, or it will make us feel as though the world is sort of hollow and dry and empty and dead, and there's nothing spiritual or numinous about it. Either way, you could feel this transit around the beginning of September calling you to some greater heroic sense of quest or urgency or action, or you might feel deprived of a sense of purpose or action. So Mars opposite Neptune can be like someone who's, fighting for a just cause politically. It can also be someone who feels like there's no cause or meaning whatsoever, and they're feeling kind of nihilistic. And the extremes are really interesting to track. So remember, if you ever want to share stories, by the way, as you're noticing this, you can always put hashtag grabbed, then put the aspect, say Mars opposite Neptune, and then share a story. And occasionally I aggregate these and we do episodes where we're essentially sharing the stories that you guys write. If you go back yesterday, I did another episode, just the second one in the series, but they are really fun to hear what you guys are coming up with in terms of how the planets are appearing in your lives. So Mars opposite Neptune at the beginning of the month, watch for these kinds of themes. Also, anything that is a little deceptive, Mars, like for example, steroids. Mars opposite Neptune, I'm getting ripped, but I'm using some kind of legal substance. Anything that could be manipulative or deceptive, and also like aggressive. So if you think about spy movies, kind of Mars Neptune feeling. Competitive swimming, Mars opposite Neptune. I was born with Mars opposite Neptune, and I was a competitive swimmer. Mars opposite Neptune. And if you watch my channel, I was born with that, and I always feel like there's I have a real, like, you can tell that I'm like an evangelical preacher's kid. You know what I mean? Like I've got that, like there's a sense of heroic quality to the way that I think about astrology and spirituality and bhakti yoga and things like that. I love the Mars opposite Neptune quality. One thing that I've noticed, though, I think this is true for Mars opposite Neptune people in general, is that you have to be careful, because if you don't have some sense of meaning or purpose, you can very easily get kind of defeatist and depressive and lazy and things like that. So I always have to like have something that I'm doing, and also have to look at the not doing or the non-action or the inaction or the almost like the quality of emptiness or stillness as an important thing to counter the Mars Neptune opposition in my own birth chart. Anyway, all right, let's go on to later in the month. Just a couple of days later, we're going to go to September 5th. And on September 5th, we're then going to see more Neptune action. Let me just make sure I've got this. Oops, nope. Hold on, I've got my notes messed up. Okay, not my bad. What I was looking at next is you're going to look at right around the 5th through the 7th. Venus is going to move into a trine with Jupiter. Sorry, guys, I was looking at my notes kind of like backwards. So here you can see that Venus is in Libra at about 24 degrees on September 5th. And by the 6th, Venus will have moved through the trine with Jupiter. So you could expand this a little bit and say September 5th through the 7th. This is a wonderful transit because you have a harmonious trine. Trines are of the nature of Jupiter, same elemental family, 2 air signs. You have 2 benefics, Venus and Jupiter. Venus and Jupiter, when they come together, tend to bring positive results, good fortune, unity, agreement, blessings, benefits, a feeling of prosperity or abundance. Now, sometimes that Venus-Jupiter trine is also going to maybe push us in the direction of indulgence, or like spending too much money, or going overboard with something. So too much opulence. It can be like a little vain or a little inflated. But this is also a really nice aspect in terms of just almost like an agreeable time. It's a great time, for example, for making like a business deal, or coming to agreement on like a lease or something like that. Venus trine Jupiter can also be a very romantic transit and kind of have the qualities of Venus sort of amplified. It wouldn't be surprising to me with Jupiter retrograde if there was some element of starting to resolve something from the past, or starting a process of almost like a momentum shift in a positive direction, because Jupiter is, close-ish now to, as it's getting retrograde, is when the sun gets into Libra, late September into October, Jupiter's going to start slowing down and will eventually station and turn direct again. So with Jupiter retrograde, sometimes things are going backward before they can go forward. So Venus picking up the trine to Jupiter might be signaling that something that is being delayed or stuck or a little set back, or something that you've been waiting on, a shift of momentum may come along and start pushing things in the right direction. I would look for that around September, 5th through the 7th. But this Venus trine to Jupiter, again, I would look at it as really kind of the wind in your sails type of transit. I really like this one. I think it should be pretty positive overall. You could also look at it as a time of justice, fairness, balance, equality, things in groups or organizations working out, and also some kind of peace or a peaceful resolution of some kind. So this is, remember also the other thing to recognize is that Venus is getting farther and farther away from the sun in the evening star position, which means that Venus is in her own sign in the evening star position, really a Venus that's working on behalf of peacefulness and an accord and working with people, a careful, good Venus here. Now, Venus is going to move into Scorpio later in the month. And then, Venus sings a little bit different song. And then by December, Venus will turn retrograde with Pluto. So there's definitely some more to the story with Venus a little bit later down the line. But right now, here at the beginning of September, I really love what Venus is doing, and I feel like that should bring some good qualities into any kind of social situations in our lives, any relationships, working things out very positively. All right, if we go forward a little bit more, we're going to go to the 13th. And on the 13th of the month, now the sun opposes Neptune. And really, it's more of the same. The sun usually gives us a sense of meaning or purpose. It's a little less mission, action, hero driven like Mars. More of that sense of what am I living for? What's the meaning of my life? What's the overall where's my life heading? And sun opposite Neptune can be a great time for there to be almost like the receipt of a new, or the receiving of a new dream or vision, similar to Mars, but less sort of less less like an action movie gearing up. Mars has more of that feeling of like a holy war, or like, again, kind of like a Joan of Arc quality. The sun opposite Neptune, I find, is often very enlightening. Sun comes through squares, oppositions, conjunctions with Neptune. I often find that my meditation practice is getting, sometimes you sort of plateau, at least if you're a daily meditator like myself, you go through periods where it's like, it's more or less the routine. And then sometimes it's like, I remember why I'm doing this. I love it. I have some breakthroughs. I feel like I'm evolving in my practice. I find that anything that can naturally be very illuminating, inspiring, awakening, and sort of point us back to our awe and wonder, even point us back to some sense of mystery and appreciation, gratitude, feeling of compassion, deep emotional connection to others in the universe. That sun opposite Neptune can create that kind of golden aura. And so watch for that around mid-September. Also, same thing happens with Neptune, the feeling that there is nothing like that whatsoever anywhere to be found. It's a weird thing, but Neptune can highlight the feeling that I don't have a vision, I don't have a mission, I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what, the world seems kind of dry and dull. In which case, really, that's useful, because in some ways that's just going to be like the precipitation that comes before the big rain. And the rain being like, the longing has to build to a certain degree before we're ready to be inspired somehow. So it could be a process that you're going through this month with Mars opposite Neptune at the beginning, and then sun opposite Neptune by the middle. And also, if your ego is out of check, like I've seen people get sort of like messiah complexes with the sun opposite Neptune, where it's like, oh, I'm a chosen special child of God or whatever. And, so, and we are obviously, but, things can get a little bit out of control with the sun opposite Neptune in terms of the aggrandizement of my sense of purpose or mission in life. A little bit with Mars too. It can be like that, actually. Always to be careful of that, but it's not that there isn't something special that we're here to do. It's almost the degree to which the ego grabs hold of it and then, tries to boost itself up or compare itself to others. So you want to be careful of those kinds of themes right around the middle of the month on the 13th, when the sun opposes Neptune. All right, let's go back to the real-time clock again. I'm going to go forward a little bit. I'm going a little bit later into the month on the 22nd. On the 22nd, there's a Mercury square to Pluto. This is important because Mercury is also going to turn retrograde on the 28th. So Mercury's hitting the square to Pluto, and then 6 days later, it turns retrograde. And the reason that is important is because, as you can see, it's going to turn retrograde in a square with Pluto. And then what does it do? It goes backward through the square. And that's going to, the going backward through the square with Pluto is going to take us into the beginning of October. So this is, to my mind, this is probably the biggest transit of the month, along with the Neptune oppositions, because when a planet is stationing, it's it's a change of phase. And in the ancient world, the word phasis was sometimes used, and it's one of the ways that one of my teachers, Bob Schmidt, who translated these ancient texts, one of the ways that he talked about phasis was as the omen or the appearance that speaks and that will say something. And so here we have the bright, evening star Mercury. Suddenly it's real bright, and then it's like stops. And as it stops, it squares Pluto. And then it turns and starts going into the underworld. Wow, that's a powerful image, right? So, what does that mean? Well, I would say that it wouldn't be surprising if, for example, a sudden revelation, an insight, a piece of information, a communication with somebody came up or arose from, from some kind of subterranean or unconscious space, and then propels us into, some kind of little drama or adventure for a while. In fact, for at least the next couple of maybe maybe a week or two, actually, because Mercury is not only going to station, but then it's going to go after it squares Pluto, but then it's going to go back in the retrograde through Pluto. So there's some kind of subterranean portal that Mercury is hitting. Mercury is very comfortable going in and out of the underworld, by the way. So I don't anticipate that this is necessarily like hard for Mercury, but I think of this as a moment where, Mercury may be delivering news that's not easy to hear. Mercury may be pointing things out that are in the shadows. There's a shadowy quality coming up around the messenger of the gods, Mercury, at this time. And things that have been hidden could be disclosed or revealed. There could be a break in relationships or diplomacy. There could be some reversal of something that we've said or done that we have to go back on, or that where like lies or deception is being exposed or something like that. Again, part of the reason for this is that Mercury is in the very diplomatic air sign of Libra, but it's hitting that subterranean Capricornian Pluto. So you've got to think that things could, it's like what's the image that I'm thinking of, the velvet glove over the iron fist. We want to watch for things that maybe certain things that are they appear very diplomatic, but there's ulterior motives, and there's control and power beneath the surface. But this is a potent transit we'll be visiting in depth towards the end of September, the 22nd through the 28th. Mercury squares Pluto, Mercury stations retrograde, and then by October 1st, it squares Pluto again. So I'm going to put the chart back up, a few more transits to visit, but that, to me, that is, I guess that's probably the transit of the month to watch for. Then we have on the 22nd of September, obviously we're going to have our Libra ingress with the sun. So it's the fall equinox if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. Won't say much about that, but on the 23rd, the next day, we will have a Venus-Uranus opposition. Now, I can't help but notice that Venus is the dispositor of Mercury, who is square to Pluto. To me, this looks like a major moment of potential challenge or change in relationships, some kind of breaking up of a bond. This is erratic kind of revolutionary energy that's coming through, and it's not a peaceful situation for relationships exactly, or it might be a time where it's very tricky or difficult for diplomacy. Why? Mercury, god of communication, in the sign of Venus, the planet of harmony. So Mercury in Libra is a very peaceful communicator, is a diplomatic, strategic, very intelligent, discerning communicator. But it's square to Pluto, so there's dark stuff that it's dealing with. At the same time, the dispositor, Venus herself, goddess of harmony, is in the battle, the embattled Scorpio, a Mars-ruled sign, while Mars is debilitated in the sign of Venus. And Venus is opposite revolutionary and erratic, destabilizing Uranus. So I'm telling you that late September moment where Venus also opposes Uranus, further evidence that things might be really destabilizing in terms of relationships. You could see this politically or in the news, or You could see relationships suddenly changing or going through a rapid evolution. You could see a breaking up of bonds or friendship, or some degree of turmoil in relationships. This is also visiting shadows in relationships, which sometimes are life-giving. Sometimes we visit shadows in relationships. We get to the bottom of things, we purge things, we release things, and there's a moment of like transformation. And so I don't want to paint it all negative, but this is like a kind of gestalt, and it doesn't look like it's entirely easy. I would, for example, breakups. I would not be surprised to hear some breakup stories, some divorce stories, stuff like that. That's not typically totally out of the blue. It's usually like if the fault lines are already there, but yeah, you get the point. On the other hand, like breakdowns in communication, or like clashes of value, or like conflicts about in workplaces, or hard time coming to agreements, or suddenly breaking out of agreements, sudden saying things that are provocative and sort of shocking, or doing things that are sort of taboo, looking at the dark underside of things, and trying to keep peace, but like there may not be, it may not be possible entirely. So anyway, that's it for the month of September. Those transits at the end are really, they're like a little stick of dynamite. So I think, earlier on in the month, it's nice that we have Venus trine Jupiter at the beginning. We've got some Neptunian action, but then late part of September, boy, things really take off. And remember, long term, that these transits at the late September are setting us up for a December that it's super intense. Our December comes around again. We've got Saturn square Uranus again. We've got a big Venus retrograde in a conjunction with Pluto. So there's a lot coming at the very end of the year. In some ways, I can't help but wonder if whatever's happening at the end of September is a little bit of a prelude for some of the very intense Venusian things happening at the end of December, which we'll talk about as the time goes on here. All right. Well, anyway, I hope you guys have a great month of September. This is useful. Remember, we'll be breaking all of this down one piece at a time as the month goes on, and I'll be doing some sun and rising sign horoscopes next week for all of you. All right. Well, have a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.